Hey marketers, welcome back to LinkedIn's Proof webinar series. This is the third in the series. It's solving for ROI on LinkedIn. This is the final countdown. It's the last one, but we're hoping there'll be many more. So let's kick things off. First of all, a couple of housekeeping details. There's no dial-in. All audio is through your computer speakers. And please ask questions through the Q&A of the console. We're going to spend about 10 to 15 minutes at the end answering your questions here live on air, so be sure to get those ready for us. And then we have some awesome resources in our resources console. We have the Solving for ROI guide, the Crash Course to Metrics, and then a link to the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions blog. So I want to thank both of my guests for being here today. I have Cassandra Clark from LinkedIn Marketing Solutions. She's a senior demand generation marketer on our team. And then Marcus Andrews from HubSpot. He is a product marketing manager for them, and I'll let you both take a few minutes to introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about what you do. And please share one thing that's not on your LinkedIn profile.
All right, I'm Cassandra Clark. I'm on the demand gen team at LinkedIn. So in a nutshell, it's basically like customer lifecycle marketing. A big part of that is acquisition, as well as customer retention, upsell, and win back. And a core of that is building a LinkedIn strategy for our marketing programs. So here to talk a lot about that today. And one thing that's not on my LinkedIn profile is I'm an insanely competitive person, like to a fault, and I think my love for data and metrics that helps me be a successful marketer goes into my life, and I gamify everything in my life.
Cool. I'm Marcus Andrews. Yeah, I work at HubSpot. I'm a product marketing manager there. I work on our social and our ads products. HubSpot, for those of you who don't know it, is a sales and marketing software suite. And I really help tell the story of our products with our product team. I work closely with sales and marketing. I talk to a lot of customers about advertising and ads and inbound marketing and our advertising product. I write a lot about the industry and space and advertising, and what's not on my LinkedIn profile is that I also do like to write a lot about the MBA. Each year I do this big data visualization around three-pointers that is like my favorite thing to do when I write about the MBA, which like right now is like pretty intense because the finals start tomorrow. So
yeah, tomorrow's a big day.
It is, yeah. Oracle over in Oakland will be pretty raucous tomorrow.
Do you have a favorite?
So I'm from the Chicago area, so the Bulls are my favorite team, but I'm kind of rooting for the Cavs in this one just because they're the underdog. And but what I really want is I just wanted to go to I'd like to see 7 games and a bunch of step back Steph Curry threes and that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, well, don't say Cavs too loudly because you're in the Bay
Area. Sorry, guys.
Warriors ground. And then one thing that's not on my LinkedIn profile, I've been trying to share something different each time for those of you who have tuned in for all 3 of these webinar series, is that my jacket game is forever strong. I have about 43 jackets in my closet. Oh, sorry, 34. I'm dyslexic. 34 jackets in my closet. And if you've been tuning in, you'll know that each jacket has been different each week.
And I can validate that because I sit next to her and it's very strong.
That's true, thank you.
That's a reason to tune in right there.
Yeah.
See which one.
Exactly. So let's dive into our agenda just to give you a brief overview of what we're going to talk about today. So we already did the speaker intros. We're going to define ROI, talk about how these 2 different teams define ROI. We're going to talk about the curve of marketing success and how to climb it effectively. We're going to talk about the basic metrics needed to solve for ROI. And then attribution, of course, the hot topic that's on everyone's mind these days if you're a marketer. And then a little bit about sales and marketing alignment. And then we're going to wrap up with some just fun questions for Cass and Marcus, just to get to know them a little bit better. We're also going to have 2 poll questions throughout the webinar just to get to know the audience a little bit better. So let's start off by tackling how to define ROI. So how do you define it on your specific teams? What goes into the calculation?
Yeah, so I think that, marketing increasingly over the last few years has had a bigger seat at the table, and we're getting much bigger budgets than ever before. A lot of that has to do, I think, with the growth in marketing technology. But with that comes the onus to prove ROI of those budgets and make sure that you're investing wisely for the business. So, just breaking it down at a high level is that, if say you spend $5,000 on a LinkedIn ad campaign and you're able to attribute $15,000 of revenue back to that ad campaign, you want to know sort of what is your return on investment. So the traditional calculation you can see on the slide is to the left is taking your ad source revenue and subtracting your ad spend to sort of get your net revenue and then dividing that by ad spend, and that's your return on investment. But I've also seen marketers do a more scaled down version of that, which is just simply dividing your ad source revenue by your ad spend. So, $15,000 divided by the $5,000 in ad spend, and that's 3 times your return on investment.
Yeah, I think this is the same way we think about it. It's a pretty simple calculation, and really it's just the revenue that's generated minus the spend divided by the spend. And what's really important is just to make sure that you align on the meaning and understand that it has a clear meaning. I think a lot of the times I'll talk to people and they kind of throw around ROI like it's a buzzword or it's a kind of a jargony kind of thing, and it really does have a very distinct definition, and then it's either your ROI is either positive or negative. And it means a very specific thing when you're saying ROI. So I think thinking about it this way and just everybody being clear on it, and also everybody having a good understanding of how you calculate it and what it means. Is it just specific to ads, or is it about your entire marketing mix? And have everybody bought into the same definition is really important. I think you want to have across your marketing team, across leadership, to have everybody kind of take it seriously and understand the definition is really important.
Yeah, definitely. And I think to better understand the audience's understanding of ROI, we're going to jump into our first poll question we have for you guys. So the question is, how would you grade your team's knowledge of calculating ROI? And the answers, your options for answers are A, we graduated with honors, we've got this. B, we're still finishing up our degree. C, we're just starting to learn it, so super beginning stages. Or D, what's ROI? Which, in case, I'm really glad that you're on this webinar. So we are going to give you a couple seconds to answer. What do you guys think? Any predictions of what we're going to see?
Well, I guess if graduating with honors, then we don't need to
call it a day. Pack up and go home. Pack it up. And you guys have an hour back.
Probably in the middle, maybe the finishing with our degree or just starting to learn it.
Yeah, I think at this point in our marketing lives, marketers know ROI is important, but I think they struggle in how do you get there?
Totally.
All
right, well, let's see what we've got.
All right.
Okay, so it looks like the majority of people are just starting to learn it, but we do have about 15% that graduated with honors, so that is very impressive.
Yeah.
I'm glad we have a lot across the board here because we're going to cover a multitude of topics across all of these levels. So let's jump in. Let's talk about ROI and how to get there and how to really climb the curve of marketing measurement success. So can you each talk a little bit about, to this slide, about what this curve means to you, the different components of it, and how your teams are effectively climbing it?
Yeah, so this is something I put together that helps kind of, I think, illustrate the journey that I see from most of the advertisers that I talk to. I think everybody, when they start running ads, they kind of think about are my ads successful in that are they driving traffic to my website? You spend your ad spend, you see a ton of traffic to your website, it seems like they're working, that's great. As people get a little bit more sophisticated, they start to look at cost per click and click-through rate, and those kind of metrics that tell you about the actual ads. So, are people clicking on them? Are they clicking through at a high rate? How much am I paying for these clicks? Like these click metrics and traffic are kind of like the click-focused view of ad success. And then what happens with most people is that they get more sophisticated and they kind of graduate to conversions, and then their whole process changes a little bit. And when you can measure conversions, you're starting to measure what happens after people click on your ads, which is really what is super important when you're running ads. Yes, you want to have a good cost per click, have a good click-through rate, but if they aren't coming to your site and becoming a lead or downloading your white paper or whatever it is, then they're not that successful. So this is kind of the typical curve of sophistication that I see, the journey, and the final step is really ROI. So then you move past conversions and you say, okay, the ads that I'm running, they're generating conversions, but then what's happening to those leads? Are they turning into deals? Do our sales teams like them? Are they MQLs? Do they turn into valuable customers or valuable deals? And so most of the time I see this kind of path, and the faster that you as an advertiser can get from click-focused to conversion-focused, really the better. So that's kind of how I think about the curve and the big points of it.
Yeah, definitely aligned with everything you said. I use the term, or sentence, I guess. True optimization nirvana can come when you start looking beyond the click and would even argue beyond the conversion.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is you might be generating a ton of clicks and conversions, but like you said, unless they're converting through your sales funnel and turning into revenue generating, leads, then ultimately you're not going to see ROI and you're just wasting your money. So, a good example of that is you could target interns and they're going to click and download all of your content and attend all of your webinars, but they don't have decision-making power. They're ultimately, your sales team doesn't want to talk to an intern and they're not going to convert into a customer and you're never going to see ROI. Yeah,
that's a great point. I think that's what I see a lot, where people get too caught up in optimizing for an awesome click-through rate and an awesome cost per click, but those could yield the false positive. You could be doing great there, but on the other end, are these conversions and the leads being generated are they valuable and are they turning into good customers? And then also you might pay more and have a lower click-through rate for your most valuable audience. So if you're only looking at those click metrics or some conversion metrics, they don't tell the whole story. You really want to understand ROI and the value of those leads that come through.
Yeah. So if you're not careful, you could be optimizing for the wrong things and looking at the wrong metrics, which brings us to our next little topic here. So we're going to kind of baseline for the crowd. Can you share what are the basic metrics to solve for ROI?
Yeah, so we talked about a few of them, and I think the curve and the wheel are similar metrics here. But in the wheel, I think what oftentimes happens is that when you run a campaign for the first time, you'll start to get in the click data. So you'll start to get in cost per click and click-through rate, and those are valuable metrics, and they can tell you a lot about your ads. And they can tell you kind of which pieces of creative are working, or are you meeting cost per click goals and that sort of thing. But you want to kind of get past those metrics as soon as you can. It's not you do want to measure them and you do want to think about them, but you want to take that data and you want to make some good decisions about your creative, and then hopefully you start getting conversions, and then you want to really focus on conversion rate, in my opinion. So once you see conversions coming in, you want to optimize your conversion path and increase that conversion rate. And then you can run the numbers again and you can start to look at cost per acquisition. So you can say, okay, what's the return on my ad spend? How much am I paying per conversion? Anyway, as you get more data in, you'll start to see that different pieces of creative have a better cost per acquisition than others, or different campaigns have a different cost per acquisition than others. And you can keep optimizing with that data and then eventually get to ROI. And you can, throughout that entire life cycle of a campaign, you're going to be getting more data. All of those metrics are going to fill out kind of over time and as you increase your spend. And you just use that to kind of optimize and make decisions as you go along.
Yeah, I think of ROI as sort of that final output that you're optimizing against, but there are a ton of metrics. It's almost like a journey until you get to see ROI, and there's a ton of metrics through that journey that you can use to optimize towards ROI and pull different levers. So, cost per acquisition is a big one, like you said. A big one that I use a lot is at the bottom of the screen, you see sort of the journey of cost per lead, marketing qualified leads, and sales qualified leads. And I think I often look at how are my marketing qualified leads converting into sales qualified leads, because if that's a low conversion rate and a lot of my leads are dropping off, ultimately you're never going to see ROI because sales isn't following through on them and they don't think that they're quality. So really making sure that I'm optimizing that metric of marketing qualified leads to sales qualified leads and making sure that our marketing leads are getting passed through that sales cycle.
Yeah, totally. And now that we've kind of baselined what the metrics are that you need to know to understand how to calculate your ROI, we're going to talk about attribution, which is a topic that I think makes everyone a little bit nervous.
I'm nervous.
But everyone's talking about it, so we have to talk about it. We have to do a little deep dive into it. I'm going to throw it back to the audience real quick and ask you guys your second poll question. So the question is, if you're using attribution, which are you using? And your response options are A, first touch, B, last touch, C, multi-touch, or D, none of the above. Maybe you don't even know what attribution is, which is totally fine. We're going to define it right after we give you guys a couple seconds to respond.
We're going to try to define. I feel like attribution, we could spend a whole hour.
It could have its own webcast for sure.
We're going to spend 2 minutes on it and hopefully understand everybody.
All right, let's see what we've got. Okay, so about 62% are none of the above. So that's not surprising, but I'm glad that we're going to talk about it and kind of do a little deep dive with you guys. So obviously there's an attribution challenge. And we knew that before we did the survey, but can you just kind of go into what attribution is first?
Yeah, so the best way to distill it down, I guess, is that you're generating revenue from your campaigns and you're able to track that revenue. And then it's looking at, if you closed a new customer, what marketing campaigns did that customer interact with and how can you attribute that revenue back to those campaigns? And that's ultimately how you're defining your ROI. So at a nutshell, there's typically 3 types of models used. The first is first touch model. So that's essentially looking at what was the first campaign that customer interacted with before they became a customer. Essentially, like, what is the campaign that brought that person in as a lead? The next is last touch attribution, which is what is the last campaign that person interacted with before they became a closed won customer. The problem with those 2 models is they create a lot of nuances and inaccuracies because they can paint like incomplete pictures of your funnel, because I think, like, for example, last touch attribution, there are channels or programs that typically might take more credit in that model than deserve. So retargeting or your email nurture programs, paid branded search. So I think the ideal state is to have a multi-touch attribution model where you can define weights across different touch points, but it's really difficult. And I think we've been talking about multi-touch for years, and no one's really cracked the code on it. I know we haven't, so.
Yeah, us neither. I mean, it gets pretty complicated. I would agree that multi-touch will give you the most kind of accurate picture of what you're looking at. I mean, I think to bring it home for people, we know that our content marketing and our email campaigns and our paid media and our social media activities all kind of influence people along the customer journey. So the first time they hear about HubSpot until the point where they close into a customer. And so we want to try and understand what is the value and what is the ROI of each of those marketing efforts so that we can better allocate our spend, so we can optimize and we can say if all of them are important, and we know that having multiple touch points is going to be the most beneficial and most influential for us. But if we have a great channel that's got a very high ROI, we want to overinvest in that. So I think that's why there is so much time and thought and effort put into it, because it is really valuable, but getting there is hard just because the customer journey is not necessarily linear, and everybody can be different, and sometimes certain campaigns can work better with different audiences. So it can be very complicated, but understanding it is powerful.
Yeah. Cass, do you have any other thoughts on why marketers are having trouble with multi-touch? I know Marcus touched on it, but.
Yeah, I think there's a long list. The couple quick ones that come to mind, Marcus touched on it a little bit, is that I think as marketers, we all fall victim to that there's this journey. There's this funnel, and at the top of the funnel, you have display ads, and that's your top funnel channel, and your last channel is retargeted. And we fall victim to that, but the journey isn't always linear. And then I think also data and systems integrations, they play a big part into telling the story of that journey, and a lot of people are victims of bad data or poor system integrations that can't really tell the whole story of what all the channels and programs are doing together. You have offline and online, and so right. It's a lot.
I agree. I think those are great points. I mean, it's also easy to kind of get caught up in it and try and really dive into figuring out the impact of one specific channel, and you can start to lose kind of the big picture of how it comes together. So it's really easy to get bogged down into it, and in ways it's always going to be kind of this foggy picture. I mean, I do think system integrations work really, really well. I mean, I think some of the things that, having a stack of technologies that fit together across sales and marketing and advertising can have a big impact to help you see a little bit clearer there. But most of the time things are very foggy, and it's hard to understand how things fit together, and it's hard to measure all of them properly. So it seems to be a big problem.
So what about first touch? Does it even make sense to attribute any revenues to an ad from first touch, or is it worth tracking? What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's definitely a valuable data point, and if that's where you're starting with attribution and measurement, it can tell you a lot. First touch is where those people is the channel that brought those people in the first place. So for a lot of companies and businesses, that is the biggest challenge, and so that should get more credit as a marketing channel than some of the other activities further down the funnel. But it doesn't tell you everything, so you do kind of want to get past that. I mean, the nice thing about ads and first touch is that ads are easy to scale up or scale down or test things and try a lot, so you can start to understand a lot about that first touch point if you have like a controllable channel like ads.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you got to start somewhere, right? And I think that, yes, we'd all ideally like to have a multi-touch model, but I think first touch is perfectly fine to look at. And I think ultimately you kind of touched on this, that touch point is what brought the customer in the door.
Right.
Without that touch point, they would never be there in the first place. So it's certainly important to give weight to that. I also think that it depends on the nature of your business. Like there are some businesses and their sales cycle and just sort of that buyer's journey where it makes sense to look at first touch. And then there are some businesses, maybe it's the case that they have a really long sales cycle that's like a year long and there's a lot of different touch points. Maybe it makes sense to look at the last touch as the attribution model.
I feel like that's the trap we fall into sometimes, is that we just default to last touch more often. Where it's
totally.
like, it's very easy to measure last touch and like know what happens there. And like we try and keep this holistic view of it, but sometimes that'll be what just kind of we naturally fall into there.
Yeah, and I think with multi-touch, people try to overcomplicate it. They try to have like all these, capture every single touch point and, have 5 or 6 and there could be 20. Maybe you can simplify it where you're just looking at a combination of first touch and last touch and what's the weight there and you scale it down as trying to like tell the entire journey, so.
Yeah,
it totally makes sense. We're going to shift and talk a little bit more about what steps marketers can take to move from clicks to conversions. So can you share a little bit about how marketers can truly measure their impact on LinkedIn specifically?
Yeah, I guess I can start since. Yeah, so I think if you're on LinkedIn and you're trying to move across that curve that we talked about, quick, easy win is using LinkedIn conversion tracking. That way you can start looking at metrics like what is your cost per acquisition, what is your average conversion rate. We also have conversion demographics in there. That way you can start really understanding, what is those baseline metrics for you and then optimizing against that.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. With what we see customers do a lot of the time is just have their advertising system talking to their CRM or their marketing automation tool, HubSpot. So we've got those two combined pieces, and then when you combine it with your advertising tool or your ad data, you're able to see a much more complete picture of what's happening. I think for B2B marketers, where the conversion happens offline with the sales team, it can be kind of hard to connect those dots. But right now we really have, I think there's a lot of really great solutions from LinkedIn that makes tracking conversions way easier and gives you a better idea of the effectiveness of your ads. And then also on HubSpot's side, we're doing a lot to try and connect the dots and kind of just make it simple and easy. So in a way, you can kind of rely on your partners and kind of trust them to help you bring the picture together.
Yeah, definitely. And as we said before, it's a journey. There's multiple touch points for you to reach your audience. Can you share a little bit about how you're taking a multi-channel approach?
Yeah. Do you want to
start? Sure, yeah. So at HubSpot, I think we always think about our campaigns as inbound marketing campaigns first. And so, we try to think about them as holistically as possible. And usually everything centers around content. Inbound marketing is about kind of attracting folks to your business and to, from the industry. And so we want to create remarkable content that really brings people to us. And, that often that can, maybe it's a piece of research, but it's probably going to have a video component to it and a social component, and there may be some long-form written content, whatever makes most sense for the campaign. And then we really want to look across different campaigns and look at all the pieces of content that are out in social, and then use ads kind of strategically to promote what's working the best. And if we see a piece of content, for instance, that's really effective at driving leads, or an event that is doing really well, we can put some ad spend behind that, promote it to a new audience, and then that's just an effective way to think cross-channel and to think kind of different touch points and different, a more complete campaign with ads built into it. I think that kind of amplifies the effect of all your pieces of content, so they're not off in little silos. You're just running your ad campaign or your email campaign or your content campaign.
Yeah, definitely. I think at LinkedIn, and this because we partner closely, that a multi-channel strategy is really core to our distribution strategy. When we launch a campaign, buyers are everywhere. Everybody's mobile now. You can't just rely on like a solid email marketing strategy as your distribution. So we always take this what we call like always on multi-channel approach. So we can make sure that we're reaching our buyers everywhere they go, no matter the time of day. So yeah, and obviously LinkedIn is core to our multi-channel approach. We have our LinkedIn showcase page where we're always posting content organically. We do sponsored content and dynamic ads and employee advocacy to making sure our employees are engaged in our content and sharing across. I would say it's definitely like we very rarely just launch on one channel, and I think it's also important if you're launching on running an email strategy in a silo of your paid strategy and a silo of your webinar strategy, you have disconnected experiences across your journey, and it's really important to make sure you have consistent messaging across all the channels that your buyers could interact with.
I feel like it's kind of easier for the pieces to fit together too now. I know with like native ads on LinkedIn, they work really well on mobile, and they kind of create this like really nice experience. So you can have a piece of content that's part of a campaign and get it in front of a new audience in like an enjoyable mobile experience, which is pretty cool too. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and you talked about email, sponsored content, et cetera. Which channels do you think are the most effective?
Yeah, so I think that for years, email and webinars are always going to be the B2B marketers' tried and true.
Right.
And they do. I mean, they perform well. We get a good quality leads from them, but it's really hard to scale your business if those are the only two channels you're relying on. You'll hit a wall, and it's important to be reaching out to net new audiences too, not just those in your database. So increasingly, as we've gotten bigger, we've reached out to other channels, I've just personified our channels. We've included paid media as a bigger part of our marketing mix and try to diversify our mix.
Yeah, I think super similar stuff for us. I mean, webinars and email are still a big part of what we do. I mean, I think we want to try and we've specifically tried to send less email, and we see it still an effective channel, but I think we've relied on it too much, and it's not really growing in its effectiveness in a lot of ways. And then we just want to follow the trends and what people are doing. I mean, I think right now people are way more mobile. They're spending much more time on their mobile devices and social. They're watching way more video. They're spending time on these mobile first or mobile only social networks and that sort of thing. So we want to kind of tailor our marketing mix to take advantage of those channels and fit with those channels. And then paid is also a growing part of our mix. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, paid is getting more. There's better solutions for B2B marketers and for SMB, and a lot of the targeting technology is getting super sophisticated and really advanced. And so it's this awesome channel with this really high upside in a lot of ways that offers scale to it. When you really find something that works, you can really scale things up with paid. So it's definitely a growing part of our channel.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something interesting that people are increasingly spending so much time on their social channels and on mobile, and if you're not out there, your competitors will be, and reaching those people. So it's important to diversify outside your email marketing strategy, because I think, like I said, B2B marketers tend to rely heavily on email, but making sure that you're out in front at the top of mind of your buyers where they're spending their time most.
Yeah, it's a tricky one too. I mean, mobile for B2B marketers has always been kind of scary and
totally.
hard, but I think it's getting easier and becoming more of a natural thing for users to interact on their phones. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and like we said before, I mean, this is a journey, and there's so much that goes into it before you even start calculating ROI, like having shared goals, et cetera. So how does your team set themselves up for success to see positive ROI?
Yeah, so I think, it's sort of a step process in my mind, the way I view it. At the beginning, it's, making sure you're going out with any campaign with a very clear goal that you're optimizing towards. And then next is making sure that your audience and your content strategies are closely aligned. I see so often that the person running demand gen and the person buying ads works in a in a big silo from the person creating the content. And a lot of times, the content team is developing content with one person in mind, and the demand gen team is buying content with the other person in mind.
Not our team.
Not our team. Alex and I sit right next to each other, so we're always aligned. But I mean, I've had a lot of valuable learnings from that, and the importance of aligning your audience and your content strategies. So that's big. And then next is always be testing, making sure that we're continuing to test our campaigns and making sure, particularly with paid media, that we are squeezing everything we can out of those ad dollars and making sure that we're running really efficient campaigns. So before Alex and I launch a new piece of content, we'll sit together and we'll build out a testing plan, and we'll go back to our agency and say, like, we need all these different variations of creative so we can test this and make sure that we're putting our sort of best foot forward. And then last is just being really close to the numbers, which I know is easier said than done because we're so busy as marketers and we're pulled in every different direction. But I see so many marketers that just kind of like set it and forget it and never go back to optimize.
Yep.
And for me personally, and it doesn't always happen, but I really try to set aside time every day to spend an hour on my dashboards and just make sure I have a true understanding of like what's happening and what like that ecosystem of my marketing campaigns is going on.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all those. I think those are huge points. I think setting goals is super important. Like, the more clear goals you can set from the beginning, it's just going to make your life way easier so you don't have to backtrack and kind of, fit into goals that you set. So, set a clear objective. I think integrations and kind of having the system set up as much as possible to do all the work for you. I mean, I think you can burn a lot of time trying to find the right data or getting the numbers to fit together. And if you just take the time to make sure that different systems are talking to each other, if you have a database, you're getting the information into there and you're sharing information across systems, like that, it can be a little bit of a technical task sometimes. Hopefully things are easy, but doing it up front will save you a ton of time and pain. And then just, I think to your optimization point and like experiment point, like taking the scientific method approach to these sort of things where, you say, this is our hypothesis for how something will do. We're not sure if it'll work, but we're going to try it and we're going to test it. And then we're going to look at the results and we're going to say, okay, this was worked. We're going to do more of it. Or it didn't work. We're not going to do it anymore. Just kind of taking that approach as like a guiding framework into everything that you do will give you good data and also just point you in the right direction. So,
and I think like the PSA, because I feel that as marketers, it's really daunting to think numbers and scientific tests and like I'm a journalism major, I'm not a math person, but it's like as we talked about, like as we have bigger budgets, it's really important that we are tied to these metrics and understand ROI. And so I think it's an important thing to really set aside time for and make sure that you're understanding your data and understanding the metrics. And, it doesn't have to be perfect. We talked about this before, we're not the most scientific when we implement these tests. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just making sure you have a baseline understanding will really help go a long way. Totally.
And you don't want to miss out. Like, there are it can just make a huge difference with ads because if you do find like a little pocket of something that works really, really well, you've got a campaign that's just crushing it, has an awesome ROI, you found something that really works, like scale it up. If you've created a machine where you put in $1 and get $2 out, you can really add a lot of fuel to that fire. And that's when ads really start to get fun, in my opinion, because you find these kind of things and you can unlock them and you can really see a lot of success fast. So, but it doesn't have to be like, I was a journalism minor, so I am also not like a super number person, but it's not that complicated. I think everybody can do it.
Yeah. So what do you say to the marketers that are tuned in that have low conversion rates? They're not seeing success. Their campaign launched and they're just seeing low ROI. How would you go about telling them how to improve it?
Yeah, so there's a lot that goes into the ad campaign. I mean, I think that's what you might default to if you're like, oh, my ad campaign has a low ROI, I need to like fix my ads. And that can do a lot and it can make a big difference, but a lot of the time it's what happens after people click on your ads. So a big mistake that I see people do is that they'll drive traffic to their homepage, which isn't like a very streamlined experience for the user. If they clicked on a piece of creative that was promoting a certain offer, it probably makes sense for them to go to a landing page specific to that offer. And so thinking about your landing pages, customizing landing pages for the creative and the ad campaigns that you created can make a huge impact on conversion rates and ROI on the other side. Thinking about if the ads are going to be presented to a mobile audience, is the mobile audience going to click through to my landing page and see this super long form? Is that something that they're actually going to fill out? And so in a lot of ways you can think about what is the experience and what is the conversion path after they clicked on the ad, and that can have a huge impact on your ad campaign. So that's at least one thing to try.
Yeah, I think that's important. We talked about earlier in the session, like what happens after that conversion too, like making sure your sales funnel is optimized. Again, you touched on landing page and like you're starting to see a lot of mobile friendly add features now. Like we just launched LinkedIn lead gen forms where you don't even have to take them to a landing
Love
page.
it.
But I think even sort of before you build the campaign too, we talked about really understanding your audience and your content and what content is going to resonate with them before you put money behind that. So I think we have a really cool tool that I use all the time within LinkedIn called Campaign Demographics. And I think if you're struggling with ROI on your ads, you can use that tool, maybe start your targeting kind of broad and dig into those campaign demographics and see if there's any sweet spots where there's pockets of audience that are really resonating with your audience, with your content, and then you can refine your targeting for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point about the lead gen ads. I think those are like, if you're a B2B marketer and aren't familiar with the lead gen ads, like you should look them up because they're really powerful. I mean, we were talking about how everybody's spending more time on mobile and in social, and like those are two things that are hard for B2B marketers.
Yeah.
And these lead gen ads just kind of cut out the lead form and make the experience of like, signing up for something or downloading something from a mobile device like really easy and really seamless. It's like an awesome, I think it's like a good time to be a B2B advertiser because there's all these fun ad units that are coming out like that. And then, taking those leads as they come out and getting them into your marketing automation system and nurturing them or getting them over to sales is super important. But just wanted to highlight that point. It's
yeah,
cool.
no, definitely. I think like we talked about, this is maybe a tangent topic, but like PDFs and webinars are like, so like core to the B2B marketer strategy. Right. But the idea of a landing page and asking people to fill out a form is kind of archaic in a way, but we all still do it, even us. So, like the lead gen forms offers like a much more seamless experience where it's in-ad, in mobile. You're not taking people to their browser, on a mobile environment.
And you can still, as a marketer, you still get a ton of information. I mean, I think that, lead gen ads or lead forms are nice because you get to ask all these very specific questions and you get all this data, but the user isn't interested in like filling out your massive form. But, as they come in from LinkedIn or Facebook, like you're getting all of this great information and you can ask custom questions. So yeah, it's an awesome ad unit.
Yeah.
And Cass and I work together obviously really, really closely, and we test a lot of our content, on our blog and our showcase page, and if we see we're getting traction organically, then we boost it with some paid, so that's a good tactic. And I think that you touched on the user experience, and I think that's super important because, putting a large lead or a large form in front of someone, it's like we're not being members first, and we're not we need to keep in mind that we are the people that we're marketing to. So we try to keep that in mind a lot on our team.
Yep.
And it really will. I think like more and more it does feel archaic and like people are changing and like, they see this. Maybe there was a time where it was less of a big deal, but especially on a mobile device, like nobody wants to fill out your lead form.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how you determine your revenue goals. Are there specific teams that you collaborate with? How do you establish them?
So I can start, as a demand gen partner or marketer, I think my biggest partner is obviously sales. We're tied very closely to their goals. So, trying to figure out what their entire piece of that pie is and then where our slice of that pie is responsible for generating revenue. So, we're tied very closely to marketing qualified goals, new customer goals, and revenue goals with our sales team. And it's very important that we have constant, feedback loop with them in order to establish like what's the definition of a new customer, what's the definition of marketing qualified leads, what's the, we call them service level agreements for following up on marketing qualified leads. So that's, the core partner for us in our ROI goals.
Yeah, very similar at HubSpot. I mean, I think we work super closely with the demand gen team. We have been and are usually very focused on like PQLs and MQLs, so like the leads as they come in and making sure that
Wait, stepping back, what's a PQL?
PQL is a product qualified lead.
Okay.
So that means, thanks. I shouldn't throw out these acronyms, but the idea there being that they kind of came in touchlessly through the product and are like hand raisers, but it's just HubSpot jargon. But we have that's kind of like a lot of our big goal in the product marketing team. But then we also work really closely with sales and like help them in a lot of ways, like tell the story to the leads that are coming in and help them communicate the value of the product. So both of those teams are super huge, and really the alignment there is really, really important. I mean, I think you can have a ton of leads and sales will, maybe they're not quality leads and that doesn't really work for the sales team, right? But you also need like a good volume, and so you want to make sure that both those teams are like aligned on that. It has to be kind of quality and quantity. So.
Yeah, I've seen it happen a lot. You know, you touched on making sure you're driving the quality. I think that the biggest tip I can give to marketers trying to have like that sales and marketing alignment is understanding what they define as a quality lead. Because the second you start, you know, you have your own perspective of what you think is a marketing qualified lead. As marketers, we think we know our audience best, and we do. We know it well. But you know, our sales teams are on the front lines talking to them. They know our customer pain points, and so if you're passing a lot of leads and the sales team is like, these are awful, we're not calling on them, you lose a lot of equity, and it makes your job really hard moving forward. And once you break that trust with them, it's really hard to get it back. They're never going to want to call on your leads, and you'll see that like MQL to SQL conversion rate really low.
That's a good point.
I've never met a salesperson who didn't want more qualified leads.
I know.
They exist?
I know.
They're like, oh, I'm happy with how qualified these are.
Dream big.
But I think it's important, like, not only do we have weekly meetings with sales leadership, but we also have weekly meetings with at least one person from each of our sales teams. So we can truly understand, again, they're on the front line, so getting their sort of first person perspective on like, you know, what are the campaigns that are working, what aren't. Also from a content perspective, being able to give Alex's team that feedback loop, like, you know, what are their pain points? What are they talking about? You know, landing pages and attribution and ROI, all that stuff, and that we can build into our content and then do webinars like this.
Exactly.
That's huge. I feel like every time we go and we talk to sales about, you know, the product or like the customers that are coming in and what kind of questions do they have and what do they want to know more about or where are they struggling or like what's hard to communicate, we learn so much. So
totally.
It's great to connect with those folks.
So I'm going to transition. We only have about 20 minutes left, so I want to make sure we have the just for fun questions and then the questions from our audience. So jumping into just for fun, can you share your one desert island metric? If you're stuck on an island, you can't bring water or alcohol, what metric do you take with you?
Bring a metric.
Yeah, you can bring a metric.
Bring a metric. No music, no food, just a metric. Well, I feel like we are on the Solving for ROI webinar, so I'm going to say ROI. You know, obviously, I think that that's sort of how we prove our value as marketers is, you know, what is the return on our investment that we're working towards?
Yeah, I think if, I mean, ROI is huge. If I can't pick ROI, I think cost per acquisition probably is like a nice kind of succinct number because then you know how much you're paying for a lead, which, you know, isn't going to show you the whole picture, but to me that one, once you get to there, it starts, you really start to get a pretty clear picture of kind of what's happening, and you can say, and then you can clearly say like this campaign has cost me X, and I'm getting Y, or each lead I'm getting costs Y, and then you'll know like, am I ROI positive, am I ROI negative, like is this campaign a winner, is it not? So that one is pretty fun for me. And
I'll say, sorry, I know you have more fun questions, but building off that,
go for it.
I'll say cost per acquisition is great for optimization if you have like a really long sales cycle too, because sometimes it'll take you 6 months to see ROI on a campaign, but you can't wait 6 months to optimize your campaign. You're spending money throughout these 6 months. So cost per acquisition is a key one that we use for campaign optimization until we're waiting to see ROI come through.
Great. What keeps you awake at night in your respective roles?
A lot of things keep me awake. I'm just kidding. Definitely attribution. It's been like the main pain point for me and getting to that multi-touch. I think like as we've grown and we're investing more in paid media and we have many more channels in our marketing mix, it's how am I telling this complete story of what's really working? And you know, email I found tends to cannibalize our attribution. And so we're really working hard to get to a multi-touch attribution model.
I'm glad you clarified that question. I was going to tell you about my neighbors who I was confused by the whole. So, I mean, I think the one for us is like things are changing so fast in paid, and like there's like lots of new ad formats, and there's all these different like targeting, like there's all this kind of like crazy like machine learning targeting options that are coming out, and like it seems like things are sometimes getting simpler but complicated at the same time. So. For us, like, you know, I feel like right now is awesome because there's all these amazing tools for B2B marketers, and like ads are really powerful, and like we're at this point where like the artificial intelligence and the machine learning built into them is like super powerful, but trying to understand it and making sure that you're making the right decisions about you know, what are the right channels and the right tools. I mean, part of that, like an easy way to solve that is just to pick great partners like, you know, LinkedIn and the other folks who are doing like amazing work in these areas, because generally they're going to come out with the new stuff that like works the best, the fastest. But just staying up on everything, I think, is something that is hard to do.
All right. Who should play you in the movie of your life?
Do you want to start?
This is my favorite one.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It tells a lot about people.
Yeah.
I mean,
totally.
the two characters, the two people that I get are Leonardo DiCaprio and Jodie Foster. So maybe like a combination of those two. I don't know.
I could see it. Do we have a Photoshop of like those two with you?
Or it's just me.
I've thought a lot about this one because I cheated and watched the previous episode, but I'd have to say Angelina Jolie. I know she has like a crazy personal life, and I'd like to think mine doesn't reflect that, but she just always plays these awesome badass characters that I love.
Pretty badass, yeah.
So probably Angelina Jolie.
All right, cool. Most annoying industry buzzword.
So I have one that's like kind of out there, but I think digital marketing. I read an article last week, and I forget what the headline was, but something around like, I don't know, how they're attacking digital marketing. And I was like having a hard time actually like being able to comprehend it. And I was like, did I forget how to read? I don't know what's going on. And then I realized it's because, like, in my opinion, everything is digital. I mean, sure, you still have offline tactics, you still do events, and maybe you're doing direct mail, but so much of our lives is digital. I have a digital watch that's connected, all this stuff. So I think that, digital marketing is really just marketing now, and it's important to stay on top of trends, but sort of segregating it outside of the marketing world to me feels like a bit antiquated.
I feel like I do like a lot of copywriting for like product and marketing, and I feel like there's people really default to these they want to say things are changing in like more extreme words, so it's like paradigm shift and like these seismic fundamental paradigm shifts that keep coming at us.
Talk about jargon.
I know.
Those are tough for me.
Yeah.
All right, that's a good call. All right, so some questions from our audience. Can you give an example? This is just for both of you, so whoever has an example, we'll go with it. Okay. Can you give an example of how you look at the data and optimize for the future, or how ROI was used?
Oh man.
Sure. I mean, like, I think an easy example of it is like, whenever we have an ad campaign, we're running like, we'll have multiple campaigns, we'll have multiple pieces of creative, we'll have like different offers that are targeted at different audiences. And we just want to test all of them and like see what works. And like LinkedIn will optimize some of that content for you with the newsfeed, with the ads like in feed and the native ads. But you can pretty quickly see like a winner out of one of the campaigns or one of the pieces of creative or pieces of content. So, as you run a campaign, just give yourself lots of options, give yourself lots of data, and then look at conversions and not the click metrics, and just see where the conversions are coming from. Like usually, depending on your ad spend and like your business model and like how long your process takes, like you're going to start to see those pretty quickly, and you'll usually see that it's like one campaign is a clear winner, and then just shut the other campaigns off and move that budget to the one that's winning and create some more options. Is a small example.
Yep. All right, let's see. Here's a good one. What do you suggest if you're getting really high click-through rates but not many sales or conversions?
Yeah, I mean, I always go back to a big part of my job spent every day is looking at audience strategies and targeting. So I always go back to the audience, like making sure, I mean, landing page is obviously key, making sure you don't have a bad landing page that people are bouncing. But, if you're seeing a lot of clicks and conversions, like I think that says that people are resonating with your audience, but sales isn't resonating with them. So, trying to connect those dots and figure out where that disconnect is from the clicks to the sales funnel.
Yeah, I would totally agree. It's probably audience in that situation, but the other things to look at would be like, your landing page experience and like the form experience. Maybe you have a piece of content that is like, an ad or a piece of creative that is really interesting and like capturing people's attention, but there's not really any like substance to it,
Yeah,
so like you can have something that people will click on. I think the common examples are like people click on babies and dogs and these sort of things. It's like they will click on it and they will capture attention, but maybe the wrong audience may not be very qualified. They may not be super interested in like what you're actually offering. So
Even, and this is like actually a very tactical tip, but Alex and I ran a test with sponsored content. I don't know if you remember this. It was the Sophisticated Guide to Content Marketing, and the landing page had a very static look. It was like this blue and white, and then we tested different ad creatives, one with like the same creative that was on the landing page, and then one with like other colors. And they all had the similar CTR, but the ones that didn't match the landing page had a pretty big conversion rate drop off. So making sure that what you're telling in your ads is the same story you're telling on your landing page, and it kind of aligns to what you're saying about the offer too, and making sure there's substance behind that offer is important.
Yeah, I would totally agree. Like I've talked to advertisers who are like creating, hundreds of landing pages or something as extreme as that, so that they can have their landing page just super customized for the ad or the piece of creative that they're using, because it'll increase conversion rate.
Yeah, 100%.
That's awesome. I can't imagine 100 landing pages for one campaign.
I've seen marketers do it. It's pretty insane. Wow. It's a lot to manage.
That's really awesome. This one's for Marcus. Do you have any tips on how to do lead scoring in HubSpot?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of two ways to do it. There's the manual lead scoring, and there's the like our automatic lead or data-driven lead scoring. I don't really have any great tips on how to do it. I mean, I think that the more data you can get into it, I know, like, I would just recommend that, like, our, gosh, I can't think of the name of it, but the, like, the data-driven automatic lead scoring is actually really powerful, and we've seen it work really, really well. And, like, I think there's a bit of a, like, leap of faith that you have to take to say, okay, I'm going to stop doing this manually, and I'm going to start leaning on like the machine learning that's in HubSpot to do it for me. But we have seen like really, really good results from the lead scoring that happens there. And that's also like another great signal that you can use to understand the ROI of your campaigns. So like if you have a longer sales cycle and the conversions are coming in, and you don't, it's going to take a few months before they close with the salesperson or something like that because they have to get worked. You should be able to see the score of the leads as they come in, which can be really helpful.
Awesome. Let's see. How do you differentiate between overall revenue and what is specifically attributed to revenue from your ad?
Yeah, so I mean, I think you want to understand both. I mean, if you want to give it a name, you could say return on ad spend for, our ROAS, return on ad spend for, instead of ROI for the whole campaign. But yeah, you definitely want to look at that and then think about it as a factor in like your greater marketing mix. But if you specifically own ads and like want to optimize it, you want to know the ROI of your ads, and then also you want to know the ROI of that channel compared to like other channels.
Yep.
How I would think about it.
Yeah, 100%. I was going to say the same thing. Like, we look at ROI almost as like this layering process. So, at the top is just sort of what's the ROI of the marketing department in general, and then content, and then the channels the content run, and then down to the specific campaign. And then, like, for me, if you can get attribution all the way down to that campaign, then that's really where you can start optimizing at a campaign by campaign level, and then driving ROI, bubble it up to the top.
Awesome. I'm smiling because there's a question for me.
Right.
Where did you get that fab jacket? From Sandy. Sandy, I got it at Bloomingdale's about a month ago. It's blank NYC. So go for it. They have different colors too.
Is that a real question?
I swear it's on here. I promise. Okay. I promise.
I know. I was watching you laugh. I was like, am I saying something?
No. It's because I read it and I was just like, oh man, I got to answer this next. Okay, so let's see. Which metric is best / most appropriate to track? Click-throughs, click %, or impressions?
I mean, I think click-throughs, that's how you can understand, is the content I'm putting out there, is it resonating? Are people clicking on it? Do they like it? But, I look at impressions too. Like, am I getting the skill I need? I have a specific lead goal that I have to hit. And, if I can't back into that with say I have like, a 0.5% CTR and, 0.2% conversion rate, like, is that backing into the impressions delivered? And if it's not, I have a problem because I'm not going to hit my lead goal. So they're all important. Like, we've talked mostly about like why conversion metrics are important, and I do think that those are sort of the core to your optimization strategies, but it doesn't mean you should ignore impressions and click-through rates.
Mm-hmm.
Totally agree. Yeah, I mean, click-through rate can tell you a lot. It can tell you, it's usually a really good signal of like, is this a good piece of creative? Like, and you can compare it to other ads and other campaigns, so it can tell you a lot of information. But impressions are interesting too. So like, yeah, all the data is like good. And like you said, like conversion data is great. It can tell you more and like is kind of a better metric, but click-through is super important too.
Mm-hmm. All right, I think we have time for probably one or two more, but we'll give it a shot. So Marcus, are ads and inbound/content marketing at odds with each other, or how can they work together?
Yeah, they work together really, really well. It's a great question. I mean, I think that sometimes you think that they may not work together. It may not be part of the playbook. And like really there's two important points here. I mean, I think that like there's a lot of really bad ads. You know, I think there's a lot of really like annoying, interruptive, intrusive advertising that's out there. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of channels that you can do that with. LinkedIn is a great partner for us because of sponsored content. Like it's awesome. It really blurs the line between, is this an ad or is this a piece of content? And if it's targeted in the right way, all you're doing is basically taking a piece of content that you know is awesome, that you know is great, that's in this like, you know, great native ad format, and you're putting it in front of a new audience. And so in that way, we think that the right ads can really amplify your inbound strategy. They can take what you're doing with content marketing, what you're doing with inbound, and they can help you get more out of it. And they really offer that like amazing scale. Mm-hmm. So if you have something that you know is working really well, like you know you're an inbound marketer, you're creating content, and you have something that like is starting to drive leads, like that is a good signal that says this piece of content is like remarkable, it's important, people like it. Take that piece of content, put some sponsored content dollars behind it, and amplify it to a new audience, and you're just going to see the conversions rack up. And like in a lot of ways, we really see that inbound marketers make better advertisers than just the regular advertising population, because they have this like content-driven strategy. They already know how to make great landing pages. They're good at measurement. They run holistic campaigns. And we've seen that the conversion rate of LinkedIn sponsored content for our customers globally was 9%. I'm pretty sure that metric's right. So we've seen our customers have a lot of impact or a lot of success combining the two practices.
Cool. And then one more before we say goodbye to our audience. How do you define a quality lead?
Yeah, that's a good one. Maybe we should have tackled that in the beginning.
Yeah.
So, you know, marketing qualified lead, I think for a lot of marketers is like that holy grail of, you know, at least demand gen marketers of like what their quarterly goals are and what they're trying to work towards beyond, you know, not just ROI. So defining a quality lead is something you're going to want to work closely with your sales team on. And basically it's like, what's the potential of this lead, somebody who attended a webinar, downloaded content, to become a customer? You know, you can use a lot of science and algorithms behind that. There's lead scoring models that, you know, can determine quality leads. I know you guys offer that. But also just working closely with sales and making sure that as a marketer, you really understand like what, you know, they're looking to talk to and convert into customers.
Yeah, I would agree with all those points. I mean, I think the big thing for us is that, you know, hopefully they've demonstrated like some kind of like signal that means they're really interested. So maybe that means they sign up for a demo, or they trial the product, or they in some way they kind of raise their hand to say like, I'm more than just a lead, I'm like actively interested. I mean, I think we want to work all the leads in some way, or nurture them in some way, but you know, those folks who are like specifically some kind of signal that says like, I'm ready to talk to someone, or I'm ready, you know, I'm like actively ready to buy, those feel the most qualified for us.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, I want to thank you guys both so much for being here today on my couch, or my chairs. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope that you gained a lot of insight and tips and tricks to take back to your team to better measure ROI. And we will see you next time. Have a great afternoon.